The recording. So the period of 17th and 18th century in Europe is called the Age of Kings. Some of the most powerful rulers in history occupied the thrones of various countries during this time. The same period could equally be called the Age of Colonial Settlement. So the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Dutch, the England, and the French had established permanent settlements in North and South America. Baroque art was an art movement during the turbulent 17th and 18th century. The Baroque art differs from the that of the Renaissance, and Baroque art is full of emotion, energy, and movement. So let's see the Baroque art in detail. The colors are more vivid in Baroque art than in Renaissance art, with greater contrast between colors and between light and dark. Baroque art has been called dynamic, sometimes even theatrical. In architecture and sculpture, where the Renaissance sought a classic simplicity, the Baroque favored ornamentation as rich and complex as possible. So let's compare the Renaissance art and the Baroque art styles. So these are the Renaissance and the Baroque architecture styles. So left one is the Renaissance one, and the right one is the Baroque one. So can you find the difference between these two types of architecture? Anyone?
The Renaissance colors kind of dark, and then the Baroque kind of light with the gold on it, make it a little bit lighter and brighter.
The Renaissance painting, the Renaissance image has paintings on the wall, and the Baroque has it doesn't. It only has like paintings on the ceilings.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. So so as you can see, excuse me. The Renaissance architecture style shows simple, logical, and classical. On the other hand, the Baroque architecture shows ornamentational and sophisticated. Very good. And now let's compare the sculpture style. So the left one is Michelangelo's David statue in the Renaissance era, and the right one is Gianlorenzo Bernini's Saint Terrace in the Baroque era. So of course, these two sculptures are amazingly beautiful and reach the highest technique, excuse me, in fine art. But the first feeling of these two sculptures are totally different. Can you find the difference between these two styles?
One looks religious and the other one looks humanistic.
But actually, both are the biblical episode.
But the Baroque seems much more dramatic.
Oh, yes, exactly. Very good.
How about the expressions on the faces, the poses?
Yep. How about lighting?
Renaissance.
Lighting.
The lighting from the Baroque puts more emphasis on the actual monument that's there, unlike the Renaissance photo.
Exactly. Very good. So Michelangelo's David shows the beauty of balance. It shows the ideal beauty. And it is very bright to celebrate the hero. On the other hand, the Baroque sculpture, the Saint Teresa is dramatic, even theatrical, and it shows a heavy light contrast by locating the sculpture in the darkest spot and using window light from the top of the roof. So that is one of the features of the Baroque art. So now let's compare the paintings. The left one is Raphael's The School of Athens in the Renaissance era. And the right one is Peter Paul Rubens' The Raising of the Cross in the Baroque era. Excuse me. Can you see the differences between these two paintings?
Yeah, there's like a two linear perspective and a one linear perspective difference.
Very good. Very good. Very good notification. Yes. Mhm. The Renaissance master is using the linear, 1-point linear perspective. Very good. How about other parts?
Well, the coloring is darker on the Baroque.
Very good. Yes. Baroque art has the darkness a lot, a little bit more. Yes.
And then like right in the center where Christ is, where they're raising him on the cross,
Very
that seems to be highlighted.
Yes, exactly. So the Raphael's painting is basically following the perspective rule, which means it is well balanced, and it is calm, peaceful, bright, logical. On the other hand, Rubens's painting is focused on the subject and not really follows the perspective rule, and it shows deep contrast with the bright highlight and very dark shadow. Also, the movement is very dramatic, and the whole painting mood is very emotional. So that is the difference. So, to conclusion, the Renaissance art shows stillness, logicality, peace and calm, classicism, and brightness. And the Baroque art shows motion, emotion, turbulence, grandeur, and contrast. So please remember the feature of the Renaissance art and the Baroque art. So based on this Baroque artistic feature, we're gonna see two Baroque artists now. The first Baroque artist is Caravaggio. Caravaggio was an Italian painter, and his paintings combine a realistic observation of the human state, both the physical and emotional, with the dramatic use of lighting. So he picked the painful moment with Jesus Christ got the crown. He is one of the most famous Baroque artists. So look at the beautiful lighting and the beautiful skin texture. It's, he's just an amazing artist. And except for the technique, the painting's emotion is very, very realistic. So feels like we are in the middle of the painful moment. And this painting is about Saint Thomas checking Jesus' wound with a surprised, profound face. And this is Caravaggio's another biblical episode painting. This is Judith, and Judith saved her people by seducing and beheading the Assyrian general Holofernes. And the same topic was depicted in the Renaissance era, so which is the left painting. Judith in the left painting looks very peaceful and calm. It is hard to believe that she is after the battle. So, and also she looks even elegant after the battle. On the other hand, the Caravaggio's painting is so dramatic and dynamic with detailed description. So it is capturing the moment of the event. And this is David with the head of Goliath by Caravaggio. This same theme also made by different era by Michelangelo. So even though Michelangelo and Caravaggio depicted same David in their work of art, their David looked totally different. So Michelangelo's David is made as a hero, and he has an idealized body because he is a hero. On the other hand, the Caravaggio's David doesn't have an ideal body, just depicted as a normal human. So also, Caravaggio shows the moment David took the Goliath's head with unpleasant feeling. And the next artist is Rembrandt. Rembrandt was a Dutch draftsman, painter, printmaker, and he is generally considered one of the greatest visual artists in the history of art and the most important in Dutch art history. So this Rembrandt's largest and the most famous painting was made for one of the 3 headquarters of Amsterdam's civic guard. These groups of civilian soldiers defended the city from attack. Rembrandt was the first to paint all of the figures in a civic guard in action. And he has an excellent technique to capture a moment in his painting, like a wild sea in a storm. So it feels like a rage of the sea. And he was very famous with the self-portrait style. He settled the traditional portrait manner in terms of pose, light, and mood. But many of artists followed this portrait painting style. So I'm gonna share a video about the one of the famous Baroque artist, Rembrandt.
Incredibly present in this self-portrait from 1660. We're here in the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C.
Rembrandt made the self-portrait a subject in a way that it had never been. His images of himself are so intimate. They are so carefully observed. In a sense, he teaches me how to look closely.
And how even to look at oneself with the honesty and directness that he is looking at himself with in the mirror.
We're in a room filled with Rembrandt. Rembrandt's. And if you look at the other portraits, for instance, look at the portrait of a young man, you get a sense of the social distance that would have existed in the studio when Rembrandt was painting. And this man sat with a kind of reserve, and there was a social propriety.
The young man that we see here likely commissioned the portrait and was paying Rembrandt to make something for him. So there was definitely a hierarchy there. And he's distanced too. There's all this foreground space in front of the figure that is absent here. His left elbow is in our space.
Maybe it's because Rembrandt doesn't need to flatter this sitter. And in fact, his purpose seems to be just the opposite, to find every imperfection, every wrinkle that expresses the life that this face has lived. But Rembrandt's self-portraits through his career were really of different types. There were the examples where he's showing himself as a young man, very well dressed. There are times when he's in costume with Saskia, his wife, on his knee. But then later, in self-portraits like this, you really see this introspective look.
And you feel the way that Rembrandt layered this fake paint on the face, and the rest is very loosely brushed, but the face has a sense of being really worked, the light moving across it from light to dark and light again, and then picking up folds and picking up the hair on his face.
But it's also the muscles and the changes, the subtle shifts in the architecture of that face that is being brought out by those brush strokes. I want to figure out how he's done it.
If you think about the Caravaggio-esque use of dramatic lighting, so you go from an area of stark illumination to an area of shadow, usually that area is demarcated in a very clear way. Here in Rembrandt, there's a movement in and out of light that I think adds to that emotion.
And look at the coloration as well. And I'm seeing greens and yellows and blues and reds and browns.
And grays.
So the intimacy is two parts. It's because of Rembrandt's own careful observation about what he's seeing, but it's also about the fact that we can feel his hand moving the brush across the surface. And so there's a kind of double intimacy.
Well, we do know that this was especially a vulnerable moment in Rembrandt's career. He had been a very famous sought-after portrait painter in Amsterdam, but had reached too far financially. He had gone into debt, and just a year or two before this painting, he had declared bankruptcy and had to sell his assets to pay his creditors.
His wife, that he loved very much, Saskia, had died. But I think that you can step into the biographical a little too much and read this painting through the pain of those experiences. Clearly, this is a man who has lived a very complex and rich life.
As people do by the time they reach the age that Rembrandt has. So we don't really need to read the biography to know that by the time you reach 53, that one is wiser, one has experienced, one has lived through the death of loved ones. That's what life is.
And that's what Rembrandt has taken as his subject here.
In his self-portrait.
How is the artist? He's a truly master of lighting, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the another art movement during the 17th and the 18th century. Like Baroque, the Rococo is an extravagant, ornate style, but there are several points of contrast. Baroque was an art of cathedral and palaces. And on the other hand, Rococo was more intimate, suitable for the aristocratic home and the drawing room. Baroque is large in scale, massive, but Rococo has a smaller scale and a light-hearted, playful quality. So let's see the examples. Before we're going to see the example, let's see the details. Okay. Oops. So, like the we skip the pages. Okay, so okay, there's this. So the Rococo is a kind of extension of the Baroque art. And the term Rococo was a play on the word Baroque, but also it refers to the French words for rocks and shells, forms that appeared as decorative motif in architecture, in furniture, and in painting. So the Rococo subject and mood of art is slightly different from the Baroque, even though it is an extension of the Baroque art. So let's see these two styles of architecture. The left one is Baroque style, and the right one is the Rococo style. So they are all complicated, but we can see, some of the differences between these two architectures. What's the difference, everyone?
Painting?
The lighting, first of all.
Yes, the lighting. Yes. What else?
And I guess even the coloring, because in the Rococo, they have more white along the columns and in the arches.
Exactly. Very nice. So the Baroque style is dark but grandeur. However, the Rococo style is bright and feminine and sophisticated with the light colors. And let's see the paintings. The left one is the Baroque style painting by Caravaggio. And the right one is one of the Rococo styles painting. So these two paintings are well using deep contrast lighting, but seems slightly different. What's the difference?
The Rococo seems like they're not necessarily having fun, but it just seems a little bit lighter in mood.
Very good. So does it look serious?
No, it's not as serious as this, the David holding Goliath's head.
Yes, very good. So most of Baroque art described biblical episodes, and also very heavy and dark and serious. However, the Rococo painting depicts daily life and the nature of novels, and it shows light and bright and very lovely. So I will show you more Rococo work of art. Oh my gosh, the music is also very peaceful. All right, let's start right here. Looks very lovely work of art. So, that's it for today. We just compared the Renaissance versus Baroque art and Baroque art versus the Rococo. So please remember the features of these three arts, the art movements for the final, which is very important. And we have a discussion today. So everyone, I need you to go to the discussion 12.1 in week 12. So please read e-textbook, page 496, Slavery and Colonialism in 18th Century Art, and discuss 2 works of art in the textbook. So that's it for the today's discussion. And if everyone uploaded your assignment too, if you didn't, please post it as soon as possible. And also, if you have any problem to upload your file in a Turnitin page, you can just send it to me by email.